30 years ago, my parents took my sisters and me to a vacation in the south of Brazil. We lived in Argentina, so Brazil wasn't that far. When we arrived at the beach city we were visiting, we went to pick up the car my parents had rented in advance. When we got there, we found out that they ran out of cars, but still had a big Volkswagen van. They didn't have any other options, so my parents took it. Now, my dad went from driving a small car in the streets of Buenos Aires to a giant machine in Brazil. And he was quite challenged, I must say. One of the times we were leaving a parking lot and were there two pillars of cement marking the exit. My dad was trying to pass between them in reverse and asked my mom, who was sitting in the other front seat, to help align on her side. And this is how it went. My mom said, "Continue," and my dad moved the car. So she kept going, continue, continue. We move, and then continue, continue, stop. Stop, we already hit the wall. Now, the reason this story came to my mind is because one of the things that Parashat Acharei Mot deals with is the risk of proximity. And from there, I want to invite us to reflect on the risks of human objectification, maybe due to lack of distance or perspective. So our Torah portion starts by reminding us of the two sons of Aaron who died because they got too close to God. There are several verses that are dedicated to explaining how Aaron and his children, from that moment on, were supposed to create an environment with enough distance and structure in order to be able to keep a safe but profound relationship and also proximity to God. In this same context, drawing the boundaries of healthy proximity, the Torah provides us a list of prohibited sexual relationships. Most of the mentioned relationships are in the category of incest. But Torah expands to other forbidden sexual relationships. It specifically names sexual relationships with animals, and almost in the same breath, do not lie with a male. Etzachar lo tishkaf. Now, we are liberal Jews, and we could say that in general we understand that we differ from this idea and that could be enough at the end. But I want to share some perspective on this, and I would like to give an example that I believe represents why it is so important to keep speaking about this. A few years ago, when I wasn't yet at TVT, but it was already public knowledge that I was going to become TVT's rabbi, I got an email from a member saying, "I am gay. My children are children of same-gender parents. I always felt welcome at TVT. I wonder if you will be okay working with me and my family. I remember being extremely surprised by the nature of the email and the question. I remember not understanding why anyone would think that I wouldn't serve their family with love and devotion. But then I got it. It wasn't particularly about me, and it had everything to do with us as a society in general. An LGBTQ family has many reasons to fear rejection. And so, it is our obligation to acknowledge that fear and to engage in creating a safer society. Now, mishkav sachar, intercourse or laying with a male. The Torah didn't know anything about love between two males or two women. And so, we find a guiding principle that it is there to address what Torah knew at the time. However, later on, with new knowledge, one needs to go and search for what we call in Hebrew, kavanat meshorer, the intention of the writer, in order to keep it relevant or to challenge its very existence. A clear example of that same situation are the laws of slavery. Even though Torah gives a structure for how to deal with slavery, one wouldn't think that Torah advocates for slavery. We would rather argue that in facing the social norm of slavery, Torah advocates for human dignity. So let's start by addressing the word mishkaf, laying, performing intercourse. The word mishkaf have a special connotation until now, until this time in the book of Leviticus, when Torah spoke about loving and consensual relationships. The word Torah used was knew, yada. Yada Adam et Chava ishto, and Adam knew his wife Chava, Eve. Same word appears in the context of Rebecca and Isaac. Now, the word mishkaf appears in a very different, and I would say also difficult situation. In the chapter 35 of the book of Genesis, we read, Vayilech Reuven, Vayishkaf et Bilah. Reuven went and lay, Ishkaf, Mishkaf, with Bilah, his father's concubine. Now, this phrase refers also to one of the forbidden relationships that the Torah enumerates in this Torah portion. And it is widely interpreted as a forced act, as an act of violence, and as an act of objectification of a fellow human being. Many interpretations will say that when Torah speaks about homosexuality or about male intercourse, as in this case, it is referring to an act of violence and subsequently the objectification of a fellow human being. That might be what Torah knew then. Now, Maybe because as a society, we haven't yet internalized the beauty of neuro and human diversity. Maybe because I grew up in a country, in a society, that the word gay was used as an insult. The Talmud teaches in Tanit 20a, page 20a, it happened that Rabbi Eleazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was coming from Migdal Gedor on his donkey, and he was feeling very happy because he had learned a lot of Torah. He passed by a very ugly man who said to him, "Peace be upon you, Shalom Alecha." Rabbi Eleazar did not answer. He said, "Good for nothing. How ugly this man is." Then he asked him, "Are all the people in your city as ugly as you are?" The man said, "I don't know. But go and tell the artist who made me how ugly is the vessel which you have made." When Rabbi Eleazar realized that he had done something terribly wrong, he got down from his donkey and bowed in front of the man and asked for forgiveness. Once I heard my beloved friend, colleague, and teacher, Rabbi Steve Einstein, sharing this story, lifting his eyes and exclaiming, "God doesn't make crap. God does not make crap," he said. And so I say today also, God does not make crap. Referring dismissively to any of God's creations is like dismissing the very foundation, the artist that created us all. Now, in the context of creation, a common religious argument referring to LGBTQ families is that in order to fulfill the mitzvah of pru vervu, be fruitful and multiply, the first mitzvah that is given to us in the book of Genesis, it is a biological imperative to have sex diversity. However, that just addresses one technical, although important, component of the commandment. Multiplication is not merely a biological act. It is also a social one. Raising children can't happen in a vacuum. Children need loving, supporting, and nurturing structures. Maybe the second word, urvu, pru, urvu, multiply, has something to do with the multiplicity of families, with the variety of families that enrich and beautify our world. The Mishnah in Sanhedrin teaches, לפיכך נברא אדם יחיד, שלא יאמר האדם לחברו, אבי גדול מאביך. Therefore, the first human was created alone. So one person will not say, my father is greater than yours. No one can say, my creator is greater than yours. No one can say, my two fathers or my two mothers or my heterosexual parents or any kind of diverse, nurturing and loving unities that are raising children in this world. No one can say, mine is greater, is better than yours. When Torah teaches us the laws of dangerous proximity, it is in fact teaching us to gain perspective. It is guiding us to draw a line defining violence, dismissiveness, and objectification of fellow human beings. Toavahem. They are an abomination. And so, appealing to our moral responsibility to work toward their eradication. And on the other side of that same line, it is encouraging us to keep gaining and developing perspective so we can recognize, embrace, and multiply, multiply love in a world that so desperately needs it. Shabbat Shalom Mevorach.